the FI4INN podcast, your platform for exploring innovation, collaboration, and transformative ideas that drive Central Europe forward. I am Petra, and alongside with my colleague Luisa, we will host you. We are thrilled to have you here as we kick off Season 2. This season, we are diving even deeper into the stories and strategies shaping the innovative panorama in Central Europe. From projects to inspiring individuals, we are here to uncover what it takes to foster creativity, overcome challenges, and create impact. For this Season 2, you can expect insightful conversations, expert opinions, and a spotlight on some of the most interesting projects happening across the region. So buckle up! Season 2 is going to be bigger, better, and more exciting than ever. Let's get started. I'm thrilled to introduce our first guest, Benjamin Rammel. With a master's degree in sustainable management and industrial ecology, Benjamin has always been passionate about combining ecological and economic development. He started his career in business development in the largest energy supplier in Carinthia, later co-founded his startup and obtained a trained license for management consulting. Since April 22, he's been a business development and innovation manager at SILICON ALPS, focusing on power electronics, startups, and the Peak Performer Sustainability Program. For Benjamin, good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity, and I think there is no bridge that cannot be built. Before we dive in, a quick word about SILICON ALPS, an Austrian innovation cluster for electronic and software-based programs founded in 2016. It aims to boost competitiveness, innovation, and international visibility while attracting talent and strengthening employment in Carinthia and Styria. Hi, Benjamin. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Can you briefly introduce yourselves to our listeners and share some key milestones that have defined your career path so far?
First of all, hello. Thank you for having me today. My name is Benjamin Rammel. I'm coming from Villach, that's at the southern border of Austria, right next to Italy and Slovenia. My journey actually started in the sustainability part. So I studied sustainability management and industrial ecology at the University of Graz. And always wanted to stay in that sustainability field. First, in a very narrow sense, I started at one of the biggest energy suppliers in the wind power departments. Then it kind of brought me towards the startup idea. So I co-founded a startup with two of my colleagues. But also that at one point was too narrow-minded for me or too small for me. So I went into something bigger. I got a job at the SILICON ALPS cluster, a cluster organization in southern Austria, Carinthia and Styria, where we mostly deal with innovation in the microelectronic department, so in the branch of microelectronics. And since approximately 3 years, I'm being there, developing projects for our partners, funding projects, FT&I projects, but also building up communities in my power electronics area. So that's like my career in some words, if you want to have it like that.
Thank you very much. You have quite of an experience, but I want to go a bit before. So I've seen in your bio that you were working in the Carinthia's largest energy supplier. What made you co-fund your own startup?
As said, as you grow older, as you like develop as a person, also your sights on innovation, your sights on business change a little. So in the energy provider job, I was mostly dealing with wind power plants in Romania and Bulgaria. we did most of the, or I did most of the business administrations of the ongoing projects there, which was a lot of fun. I will not make that any smaller as it is. But at one point in a big company with lots of processes, at one point it's not enough for you anymore as a young person that is trying to develop. So at one point I wanted to make my own thing, do my own thing. So two colleagues and I did start a startup in the IT department, I would say. We developed software that should help salespeople to have a bigger performance. We tried to put in AI techniques that maybe we were a little too early when I was talking about that step in my life. It was before 2019 or something, and that huge AI thing, the huge coming up of AI, ChatGPT, whatsoever, did not really start before 2022. So it wasn't like a huge thing to make a company with AI. Nobody really knew what we were doing, what we are planning to do. But that's a thing that gave me a lot of joy to be in an open field and some kind of an open innovation how to coin it, branch or setting. And that's a thing I still very much like doing. I still like looking into the future, maybe into unknown territories, unknown technologies. And of course, one big aspect that made me fund that, or that made me go into that startup is you can be way more agile at that moment. And if you're being in a very innovative field, or in a very in a field that's changing a lot, you have to be agile. And the processes of bigger firms, of bigger companies, often, or in that time at least, did lack a little bit of that openness, of the innovativeness, of this agileness. And that was one big point that made me do that, and that made me also take the financial risk in the end. That's what some people don't see when they talk about startup and entrepreneurs and people that are funding startups. At one point, most of the time, you give up a well-paid, or at least a paid job, to get into zero income at one point. And the positive sides of that needs to be way bigger than only the monetary things that you want to have from this startup. So at one point, you have to be in with your whole heart and with all your hopes, because in the end, you have to survive. In the end, every idea you have, every innovative, or every approach you take is nice to have and nice to do. If in the end, after some time, it doesn't pay you money, or you don't get any funding or whatsoever, in the end, you have to live. So that's like, yeah, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I was actually going to tell you that you were very courageous. So, congratulations. And was the fact that you founded your own startup that made you join Silicon Alps?
At some point, it was a step that took me there. Yeah, I was as I was talking from like a personal development, going to university. I had in my head, I had a very narrow approach, or a very narrow side of business, or of innovation, also of sustainability. Even though I studied it, it was like, okay, you studied something with sustainability, and those are the three kind of jobs you can do. You can go into energy, you can go into consulting, or you can stay at the university. That was the possibilities at that point in my life. But funding that startup, getting out of that corporate ways, showed me that there's way more to innovation, showed me that there's way more to business, and also showed me that there's way more in the ecosystem that can be addressed, that should be addressed. And so in the end, yes, being in a startup kind of gave me that development to think of business in a broader sense. So yes, in the end, I would say yes to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benjamin. And indeed, this presentation, thank you for sharing your story. And giving us this background is really helpful, because really bring me to lead me to make the next question that really are related to this, as you mentioned about the struggling that maybe you had when you kick your startup. So speaking about the innovation ecosystem in Central Europe, and particularly in Austria, it faces both unique opportunities and challenges, right? And in your experience, what are some key factors driving or hindering innovation in the region?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, I see both sides, to be honest. There are opportunities, but there are also challenges. And I would like to put that into an example. I know it's like you've read it all over the news and everywhere, how Germany and Austria is dealing with the supplier with the car supplying industry and the electronic the e-car industry. And that's the whole thing. As Central Europe, and I think especially Germany and Austria, we have huge technical expertise. We are those like engineers. We engineer stuff. We make stuff better. Made in Austria, made in Germany is a huge thing everywhere, and everybody is like, we have that kind of standing in the world. Also at the academic side. However, that sometimes can hinder innovation, at my point of view. At some point, over-engineer everything and make everything as perfect as possible. Get those 100% efficiency rates at every time can hinder you. At the other side, if you look in other countries, that's more of a cultural thing to do now. Looking to America, if a company is like has their first product that barely works, they go to the market. Then they work. They go. It's our thing. It's perfect. We work with it. You can buy it. In Austria, as a startup, and that was what we saw. We were always trying to push the product, make it better, and we never saw that point of no return where we should have just said, okay, our product works, our product can be monetized, we put it on the market. So that's the first thing, and there are two other things that are, I think, hindering the development here, especially for startup, but also for bigger companies. And that's that most of the initiatives in Europe are very fragmented. Austria is doing their stuff, Germany is doing their stuff. There are some European things, but there is no like way that everybody's going, not the same direction. And that fragmentation leads to everybody brewing their own soup, we say in German, make their own stuff, do their own things, but don't cooperate or collaborate on things. And I think that is a gap that especially startups, but also organizations like us can try to build bridges over. And the last thing I want to say, which is a little bit more startup related, is there is not that much access to venture capital. What we do have very good in Austria, and we actually can be proud of that. If you're a startup and you need money up to, let's say, 2 million euros, there are lots of programs, lots of organizations or projects where you can get that money. If you wanna go further than that, actually start to raise and actually start to scale up, there is a little lack of venture capital, 2 million euros plus, and that's a thing that also should be addressed a little in our country.
Thank you, Benjamin. Indeed, what you mentioned about the fragmentation between states and countries and the availability of venture capital, it's really related to what is the mission and objective of this project, no? Combining the expertise, the best practice of, in this case, Central Europe, but of even beyond the Central Europe country and regions. So try to achieve what are the good practices around, and also to share and to make it more harmonized as a European level in that sense. And that brings me to the next question, and referring to the Silicon Alps, how does Silicon Alps addresses these challenges, also the one that you were mentioning, and how it supports stakeholders in overcoming obstacles to innovations?
I'd actually like to split that question up into two segments. The first segment is what to do locally, what to do in let's say Austria or like our branch, and on the other hand, a more European or a more international view. On the first hand, on the first segment I wanted to talk is what we are doing as the Silicon Apps cluster. We're trying to be the spark, the catalyst for collaborations. We are not doing the innovation. We are not developing chips. We are not building chips, but we are trying to make platforms for people that are doing that. That can be as easy as networking events. That can be as easy as bringing two companies together that may be working on the same things. That can be also a little harder if you're talking about actually like innovative products where more than one companies are working off, and sometimes those companies also are competitors. Then it's a little bit more effort. And what we're trying to do, we have those 4 areas in our cluster. I'm in charge of one of the power electronics community of the area of excellence power electronics. And what we're trying to do is make safe spaces for the companies. And that's the thing. In my power electronics community, we have around like 50, 60 companies, around 150 people. And the fun thing is, when I started in the cluster, that community wasn't existing. So I was trying to build that up. And in the beginning, there wasn't a lot of co-innovation, a lot of talking to each other on a more than a superficial level. But at some point over those years, people felt like, okay, they're talking to peers, they're talking to companies and people with the same mission, with the same agenda. And they started to actually collaborate, talk about projects, talk about funding possibilities. And that's like the local thing we're trying to do. From my very small example, of course, in bigger examples, if you take like the whole microelectronics branch, we're doing it on the bigger level too. That's like the local level I'd like to say. The bigger level is, and I think it's as important as the local level, is to collaborate on an international level. And we're trying to do that. It's not that easy. Of course, we started with business missions, with delegations, outgoing missions, incoming missions, where actually we said, okay, we have our community here in Austria. Let's bring them together with the community in Germany. We tried Japan once. We're doing Netherlands next year. But it's very short term, because it's like a week of exchange. Maybe there are some business opportunities afterwards, but there's nothing that how to coin it, that actually stays alive after that contact. And what we're doing now, very happily, we got the news from the European Union that starting with January this year, we can lead the Austrian Competence Center for Chips. there will be more than 10 competence centers, microelectronic competence centers all over Europe. And we can do the Austrian ones. And on top of that, what we do is we have a project also in financially in the size of that, where we actually try to connect those competence centers. So what we're trying to do is, starting with this year, actually build a network that is like bigger than the Austrian one, and maybe make it a European network, maybe make that exchange bigger and better.
Thank you, Benjamin. Indeed, I mean, this is one of it's a really good news, first of all, and maybe also might help in providing and kind of going beyond this fragmentation, also about engineeristic aspect and sharing of knowledge between countries. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now switching to more the innovative, in financial schemes. The financial schemes often play a crucial role in enabling startups and SMEs to grow, to kick, and to scale up as well. And how does Silicon Alps approach and or support the development of such schemes, and what kind of impact have you observed during the time have you working there?
Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, that's a topic I really like talking about, because especially in my years in Carinthia, I felt that a lot of organizations, a lot of people try to work with smaller organizations. And in German, we have that saying, too many cooks destroy the meal. So everybody, or there was a time in Carinthia, but also in Austria, where everybody was trying to get on that startup train. Every organization wanted to support startups. Every organization wanted to make funding projects, or sometimes only marketing, that they are helping startups. What's needed in the end sometimes is a little bit of streamlining. And I really like how we are doing it now at the moment. As you said earlier, we met each other at the event of the Corinthian incubator, Bild Gründerzentrum or Gründungszentrum. And that's exactly how we're trying to do. Okay, there is that incubator. They have the task to help startup develop, help them how to make their business model, maybe give them early support, early money. And we know exactly at one point, our task is not to take over, but to give a little more support, but not in the sense as an incubator would do, but in the sense of what we are doing with any company. We're trying to give them the possibility to connect to bigger companies. We're trying to give them funding opportunities that are in our network. And I think that's like a lesson that a lot of organizations, a lot of ecosystem have to learn. Not every organization, not every project need to deal with everything, even though it's tempting, and even though it's, of course, everybody wants to do as much as possible, but everybody should have their job, should have their description, their role description, and stay in that. And if then the connection between, for example, an incubator and the cluster and the network works well, then I think they're the best. There's the best way for a startup to actually have lots of support. Don't have like 3 organizations fighting over who is supporting that startup now. I think that streamlining, or that funnel that a startup can go through, that needs to be defined. And then also the money that is put in by a state, by the European Union, or by organization, is put into the startup in an efficient way.
Thank you. Thank you for your clarification, explanation on this.
Now it's my turn. So, one of the things that when I was researching about Silicon Alps that got my attention was about the sustainability funding program called Peak Performer. Can you please elaborate a bit about this program and share one success story for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd love to, because it's kind of my baby. So in early 2022, we were approached by our local funding agency, KWF, Corinthian Funding Agency, I'd say, Kärntner Wirtschaftsförderfonds, that there is the possibility to get a cascade funding project, which means that there's the possibility for the funding agency, the local funding agency, to get access to European money, get that money, deliver the money to us, and we can deliver that money in projects to our partner companies. So the thing is, we know exactly, or we try to know as good as possible what our companies need. And so in the end, that Peak Performer funding project came out. It's a funding project where small, medium-sized companies and startups can get approximately 50,000 euros in consulting fees. And in contrast to other funding programs, we are doing all of organizational stuff, which means that a startup that is coming to us saying, okay, I want to make some AI adjustments to my back office and I want to make a project with you, they don't need to go through the whole process of, okay, I need to define the project, I need to write a proposal, then I need to wait for an answer, then I need to find possible consultants, need to pay them, need to do all the reporting and documentation. What we were trying to do is put that all onto our shoulders, because we are pretty much used to writing proposals. We're pretty much used to finding offers of consultants, of all the reporting documentations. We are pretty much into that. That's our day-to-day work. I've talked to lots of companies, especially SMEs, that say, okay, if we want to go into F&E projects, we would need a whole new person to do that. We don't have the resources to do that. And so we try to make that program as easy for companies as possible, and also try to get those three pillars. On the one hand, we're funding sustainability projects. So everything going from ecological, environmental, economic projects, digitizations, having all the AI topics, all the cybersecurity topics whatsoever, and of course that kind of innovation part, innovation management whatsoever. And in those three fields, we did some first projects. In Carinthia, we did like approximately €250,000 in project last year. We'll also do the same next year. In Styria, pretty much the same. And one success story I'd like to mention is actually from a startup, which I felt a huge connection to. At one point, they started very early, and as I said, we're very engineering and engineers here, and they were developing their product and developing, and at some point they went into the market, but the whole back office was completely manual. So if you wanted to go to them and get your account, you have to write them an email, then you get an email back with your logins whatsoever. And with that project, they actually said, okay, we don't want to do the easy way, maybe to get some software, to get some application that can make that registration process put into our application, into our websites. there are like lots of suppliers for that. It's easy, but they said, okay, we want to go one step further. And that's why we called the whole program Peak Performer, because we were searching for those like peaks. They said, okay, we want to actually put in AI into that registration process, and they needed a consultant or constellation on how to perfectly put in AI in a process that is already pretty much streamlined and they wanted to like kind of change that approach and the process, and they did that with that money. They have the concept now, and now they can actually go into how to implement those changes.
That's very interesting. Since you have the know-how, you can help companies optimizing themselves and their process. And also we know that writing a proposal and deliver it is a lot of work. That's why I believe that collaboration is the key to innovation. So I'm going to the next question. You know that academic institutions, they have also the know-how, the deep research, and that is very interesting if we can connect it with startups and established companies, because your startups are more technical. So how does Silicon Alps fosters these partnerships between startups, companies, and academic institutions?
That's a very good question, and I think it's in the end it's all about building bridges where there are no bridges, and like tearing down obstacles where there are obstacles. For example, and that's like I actually say standard case in our branch. If you're being a startup in the microelectronics industry, and you actually want to go into developing, designing, or actually building chips, first of all, there's a lot of money needs to be raised. But that's, I will like put that thought away now. What you need is often you need a big partner, a company, and most of the time those companies I'm talking about are like huge international multi-billion companies, and often it's a big David and Goliath story. Then how easy do you think it is to get a appointment at a big company, at the international company, if you're a startup that maybe don't even have like an internet page, don't even have a website or something? And that's exactly where we are trying to get in. So we are trying to build that bridge. We know the company, they know us, they trust us. We know the startup, we know what the startup needs, we know what the company can deliver. And so we try to bring those people together. And honestly, most of the time, that's like the biggest biggest achievement a startup can get early on, to get like a big partner, a sparring partner in the beginning. Lots of companies do have those startups programs. It's actually barely known as underneath startups or as by founders. We try to make that, and of course the academic side is also very important. We're talking about high tech things here. It's not so easy that a startup can, how to coin it, start in their own garage and design a chip. They need the companies, but they also need the academical side. They need the knowledge, the science, and also that needs to be brought together. But the same thing, how easy do you think it is to get an appointment as a startup, as at the top professor at whatever university? They have their agenda, they have their things to do, their day-to-day business, and that's the bridges that needs to be built. And the fun stuff is, once that bridge is built, nobody will ever even think about destroying that bridge. Everybody can go over it. The startup will, most of the time, will have great relations with the companies, with the universities or institutions, and use that bridge as often as possible and in both directions. The company also knows, okay, there is a very agile, very innovative startup. We may have a new innovation, we may have an idea. We can't do it in our day-to-day business, but we know that there are people in that startup, they're dealing with that. Let's collaborate on that. So it's not a bridge we built that is a one-way bridge, it's a two-way bridge.
I do agree with you. And I agree that the fact that we need to build bridges, so what is behind, we don't like all the struggle and everything that the startups need to go through, they don't have to go through anymore. That's how we progress. And now, on a more particular note, apart from the peak performer program, what is there any particular achievement you're most proud of during your time at Silicon Alps?
Yeah, a lot of achievement that, looking back, I'm very proud of. As you said, that the peak performer program that was kind of designed. But what I like to go back is actually that power electronics community that I am building at the moment, or we are trying to build at the moment. When I came to the cluster 2022, there was no community in that area, at least. There were other communities. And interestingly, I did not think that it would take time for a community to build up. But in the beginning, the community was more like a loose connection of people that are talking to each other once in a while. But after a year and after many events, after many also one-on-one conversations from my sides with the community members, it started to become a safe place. So people came and they knew that if they were at some kind of event or at some kind of gathering that was connected with the Silicon Apps cluster or the community, they knew at some point they are safe to say a little bit more than they would say like in a public event or in a public gathering. And they actually started to come with project ideas, with innovation that they started sharing with the community, they started sharing with me. And the most funny thing is actually at one point that was like summer of last year, we had like our internal, we have two bigger events a year. One is like a conference and one is a internal strategy meeting, I'd say. And I was being on stage and I just said what happened in the community. And afterwards, one of our partners that was not in the community first came up to me and said, hey, I just saw, I had to come to you now. I saw your presentation and I had that idea for a project in my head. And exactly the people I need for that project were all on your presentation. I need that company, that company, that company. Can we maybe make an appointment? And out of that, we now put in a 6.4 million euro project with the National Funding Agency with like 12 of our partners. And I think that's like, I'm not proud of doing something for that. I'm just proud of giving that platform, giving that safe space, giving that opportunities that people actually can try to go into that open innovation mindset.
Thank you, Benjamin. And now looking more to your journey as a co-founder of a startup, maybe, what kind of advice would you like to give to entrepreneurs that would like to start a career and start a new startup? And what do you think is the most surprising lesson you have learned during your career as well?
For me, that's actually a rather easy question, because I did learn it after I would have needed it. The thing is, there is people outside, there are organizations outside, there are programs outside that help you. If you're thinking about making your own company, starting up, or doing whatever business you'd like to do, there are people helping you, especially in that early phase, the pre-startup phase. There are people, organizations, and money you can get to develop that idea. You're not alone, even though if you're in a group of 3 or whatever. There are people with knowledge, there are people with experience, there are people with a network, and they give you that. They try to help you. And when I remember back at my time at the startup, our biggest achievement, our biggest dream was to like bootstrap the whole thing without any help from outside. And in the end, we would be like the heroes of the day or something. But that's not needed, and that's not necessary. There's lots of support you can get from incubators, from the states, from funding agencies, and also maybe that's in the big. If you're thinking about making a startup, don't overdo it in the beginning. Don't go from 0 to 100% from one day to another. Try to get those opportunities, get those support before you give it 100%. And if I had done that in that different way, if I would gotten to the Bildgründungszentrum, to the incubator, lots of things would change. It would have been a little slower, probably in my part, but it would have been way more sustainable as a business.
Thank you, Benjamin. I think don't overdo it is could be the best slogan of this podcast series.
And with this, we finished our conversation. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Your journey is very inspiring, and I'm sure it can inspire someone of our listeners, and also it inspired us. So thank you very much, and continue your good work. And happy 2025.
Thank you very much, and same to you. Have a wonderful year and lots of opportunities. There is people outside, there are organizations outside, there are programs outside that help you. If you're thinking about making your own company, starting up, or doing whatever business you'd like to do, there are people helping you, especially in that early phase, the pre-startup phase. There are people, organizations, and money you can get to develop that idea. You're not alone, even though if you're in a group of 3 or whatever. There are people with knowledge, there are people with experience, there are people with a network.
This is the FI4INN podcast. Stay tuned for a season full of innovation, collaboration, and inspiration.